Jordan Peterson is not known for holding back his thoughts. However, the most prominent biblical interpreter in the world today remains tight-lipped about whether or not he believes in God. Peterson went on to the Joe Rogan Experience, where he lamented that the culture is dissolving and discussed his visit to the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C., as well as his thoughts on society. Roughly speaking, he remarked, "We have a bedrock of agreement. By the way, that's the Bible." Peterson went on to explain how he came to this discovery while walking through the museum, observing that one floor is dedicated to the history of the book. For a while, literally, there was only one book, and that book was the Bible, he remarked. Most other writings, according to him, were therefore born from the Bible, which he defined as a rich collection of materials. All of those books, in some sense, emerged out of that underlying book, Peter explained. And that book itself, the Bible itself, isn't a book, it's a library. It's a collection of books. Later in the conversation, Peterson discussed Western civilization in greater detail, defining fundamental text as the texts in which most other texts rely. He named William Shakespeare's work as one of numerous texts that inspired more other texts before naming the Bible as the ultimate source of all linguistic production.
The texts upon which most other texts depend. And so you'd put Shakespeare way in there in English because so many texts are dependent on Shakespeare's literary revelation, with the Bible at its base, which is certainly the case.
This simply indicates that Scripture has a unique role in displaying, establishing, and propagating truth. It isn't that the Bible is true, it's that the Bible is the precondition for the manifestation of truth, which makes it way more true than just true, Peterson added. It's a whole different kind of true. I think this is not only literally the case, factually, I think it can't be any other way. It's the only way we can resolve the problem of perception. Peterson spoke about the downfall of Western civilization during his time on the podcast. He explicitly mentioned gender fixation as an indication of civilizational collapse, which enraged the far-left progressive activist group Media Matters, which routinely demands that advertisers boycott conservative news commentators. The discussion regarding gender started when Rogan mentioned comments by Douglas Murray, associate editor of The Spectator and the author of The Madness of Crowds, who likewise believes civilization is failing. Murray remarked in a previous edition of his show that as societies begin to collapse, they become obsessed with gender, according to Rogan. He was suggesting you could trace it back to the ancient Romans and Greeks, Rogan explained. Peterson elaborated on this claim, claiming that it's not so much an obsession with gender as a precursor, like so it's a marker for, if categories just dissolve, especially fundamental ones, the culture is dissolving. From then, he and Rogan got into a discussion about the Bible. Rogan later asked Peterson, "What do you think it signifies when someone is so attracted to the idea that they were born in the wrong body, that they were willing to go through surgery?"
You think it means when someone is so attracted to the idea that they were born in the wrong body? It means so much. They're so compelled that they're willing to go through surgery to change.
A lot of people who are manifesting serious issues with gender identity are on the autistic spectrum, Peterson responded. He also compared the prevalent occurrence of transgender persons to the satanic ritual abuse charges that appeared in daycares in the 1980s. The aforementioned frenzy, according to Peterson, was caused by women going into the workforce en masse, leaving their children with strangers, and starting to have pathological thoughts about it, especially if they were borderline schizophrenic. Those fantasies propagated into the population, he recalled. He suggested that something similar was happening with the widespread adoption of transgender identities, telling Rogan that a relationship exists between creativity and gender dysphoria. They're not stable in their identity because they're creative. Peterson added that creative people, by definition, aren't stable in their identities. That's what makes them creative.
Creative people, by definition, aren't stable in their identities. That's what makes them creative.
Later, Rogan sought to clarify that the motivating factor between people who want to change their gender identity is creativity. Peterson then replied, declaring, "I don't think so. I know so." Peterson's most recent appearance on the Joe Rogan Experience comes roughly a year after he began openly discussing his faith journey. Peterson grew up Protestant and spent much of his public life as a religious skeptic, but he appears to have embraced his faith after experiencing health troubles. He recently lit up YouTube with a prayerful reflection in which he challenged our ever-divisive culture to tackle a critical, contemplative question: who is the enemy here? Mikhaila Peterson, his daughter, claimed in October that she had come to faith in a very sudden conversion. I'm pretty new to this, she admitted on the first edition of her podcast, which aired on October 1st. For the last month or so, I've been reading the Bible and praying, and it's been like the amount of peace I've never had before. It's completely absurd. I can't believe it. With that, we come to the end of today's video. Do let us know your views on this video in the comments section below. We hope you enjoyed watching. If you did, then do leave a like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. See you in the next one.